When you're done writing a sermon and you're about ready to put the stamp on it and say, this is ready for delivery, there are 3 questions that you should ask before you give it that final approval. These are 3 simple questions that are a way to evaluate the sermon that you've written to make sure that it's ready for prime time. And we're going to talk about each one of these 3 questions in this episode. This is episode 44 of the Preaching Donkey podcast. Welcome. My name is Lane. I am your humble host, and this is the podcast. I want to give you something for free as a way to say thank you for listening today, and it's also going to be a really helpful guide for you as you're asking the questions that we're going to be talking about in this episode. And that is my 21-day guide to creating killer sermons. You can grab that at preachingdonkey.com/21days. It's a 3-step, 3-week process that will walk you through how to create and deliver a compelling, life-changing message. And whether you've been preaching for a little bit or a long time, there's something in there for you. So go to preachingdonkey.com/21days. So let's dive into the content for today's episode. A few years ago, I saw a video by Pastor David Whiting. At the time, he was the pastor at Northridge Church in Rochester, New York, and then he went to be at the Vanderbloemen group for a while, and now he's pastoring a different church. But he gave this talk to pastors, and he talked about these 3 questions. And so I want to give him credit. This came from David Whiting. But I felt like these 3 questions to ask before you finish writing a sermon, or at least before you preach it, are so good. It's so simple to work your way through this, and it covers just about everything that a sermon needs to be. So here are the 3 questions. I'm going to give you all 3 questions, and then we'll walk through each one and what we mean specifically by them. And then this will be a tool that you can use when you prepare your sermon. So the 3 questions are this. Number 1, is it accurate? Number 2, is it compelling? And number 3, is it clear? So is it accurate? Is it compelling? Is it clear? So let's go through these in order. The first question you want to ask is it accurate? And what we're talking about, first of all, is it true to what the Bible teaches? Is what I'm teaching, are my assertions and my conclusions, the points that I'm making, are all of them backed up and provable in Scripture? Is it accurate? But we're also talking about a general sense of accuracy in life. Like, is it true to life? Is it a believable message that people are going to go, oh yes, I relate to this. I can see this in my life. I understand this. Is it accurate to true life? Is it true to the Scripture? Is it true to the text? If you bring in outside sources or quote statistics or anything like that, have you checked your sources? Is it accurate? The reason why this is so important is because if it's not accurate, especially if it's not true to the Scripture, you're in danger of teaching false doctrine. You're in danger of teaching heresy, which none of us go into this wanting to do that. But it can easily happen if you're not careful to weigh your assertions against what others have taught. Maybe you're checking against commentaries or other sermons that you're watching or reading on that same text, or you just know your theology well enough to know that your conclusions are accurate. And if you don't know, it's important to double check. This is one of the things that's really important for new communicators, people that haven't been preaching for very long. Maybe you're still working through your training in seminary or Bible college or whatever kind of training you're getting, and you're given opportunities to preach. It's very common to not realize that you're coming to what has been shown to be inaccurate conclusions. Now, some of this has to do with what kind of denomination you're in, what your denomination teaches, because there's many different ways to see the Bible. If you don't believe me, there are 30,000 different Christian denominations. But if you are being inaccurate in your teaching against maybe whatever your denomination teaches, or just kind of basic essential doctrine that 99% of us agree on, be very careful. Make sure that it's accurate. One easy way that you can ensure that you're not making simple mistakes with accuracy is just read the text in context. Avoid proof texting, where you're taking a one verse of scripture and saying, see, this is what it says, when in context, you realize that the meaning is actually much different than what you're pulling out of it. So just by being in context, you can avoid a lot of this, but test the accuracy. Is it accurate? Number 2, is it compelling? Is it compelling? What we're saying here is, does this message touch anybody in a way that makes them actually care about what you're saying? Do they care? Are they going to do anything with it? Is it life-changing? One of the things that I talk about all the time here at Preaching Donkey is that a lot of pastors, when they finish a message, will ask themselves questions like, did I say everything I planned to say? Which is not the right question to ask. The question to ask is, did they hear what they need to hear so they can do something with it? The much better question to ask is, did they hear? And similarly, a great question to ask is, not only did they hear, but do they care? Like, does it matter to them? Are they compelled to do anything with it? Because if my message is accurate but not compelling, then it's like a lecture, right? I'm giving accurate information, but nobody cares enough to do anything with it. So one of the ways that you can help make your message compelling is by building tension. We talk about this a lot. It's in the 21-day guide at preachingdonkey.com/21days. But we talk about this a lot here at Preaching Donkey, that you must build tension in the beginning and all throughout your message, because you have to continue to demonstrate and show people why what you're saying matters and why they need to continue listening and paying attention, because what you're saying is going to be important to them. It's got to be compelling. So it needs to be accurate, true to what the scriptures teach. It needs to be compelling. People need to care, and you need to demonstrate that it matters so they do care. And then, is it clear? Because if it's not clear, then it doesn't matter how compelling it was or accurate it was. Nobody understood what you said, right? So it needs to be very clear. In other words, you need to make points or a main point that people connect with and understand. You need to go to the scripture, which you have accurately exegeted, and you need to show what the scriptures teach in a very clear way. So often, people will mistake confusion for depth. They'll think, oh, I was in a sermon, I was watching this guy preach, and it was so deep. And what they mean is, I didn't understand a word he said, but he used a lot of Bible, and he used big words, and that's impressive, and we're teaching the scriptures, right? Well, if that's what you want, then, preach that way. But if you want people to actually understand and hear the word that is taught with clarity and be able to actually know how to go live it out and be compelled to do so, then it has to be all three. It has to be accurate, has to be compelling, and it has to be clear. How do you make it clear? There's a few things you can do. One, focus on one main point. What is the bottom line? What is the main idea that you're trying to drive home? And then use your other points to bolster that main point. A lot of sermons get lost in way too many directions, right? We're making a point here, and we got a list of 3 things over here, and we're making another point there, and here's an idea here, and here's a tangent there. And at the end of it, we've got a lot of information, and maybe it was accurate, and maybe parts of it were compelling, but it wasn't clear. So if it's compelling but not clear, I'm motivated, but I don't know what to do, right? If it's clear but not compelling, I've got a great idea of what I need to do, but I don't care enough to do it. And if it's clear and compelling but not accurate, then I've just been motivated to do something that doesn't ultimately matter because it's not true to Scripture. So it has to be all three. It needs to be accurate, it needs to be clear, and it needs to be compelling. And if you can do these 3 things, and these function really well as just a simple, quick check. When you finish your message, walk back through it and say, is it accurate? Is there anything that I've said here, any conclusion that I've come to that I didn't really check, that I didn't really do the research to make sure that what I'm saying is true? Is it accurate? Is it compelling? At every stage of the message, am I demonstrating why the listener needs to and should continue listening, because there's going to be a lot of value here. It's compelling, and it's going to motivate people not just to keep listening to the message, but when the message is over, they're compelled to go do something with it, right? It compels them towards life change. And then, is it clear? Is there any point where I'm confusing? Is there any point where I'm saying something because maybe I want to say it or it's interesting, but it doesn't really contribute to the bottom line of the message? Does that need to be cut out? Do I need to explain it better? Do I need to simplify my approach? Am I clear? If I'm compelling, accurate, and clear, all those three things kind of work like this trifecta of what could be a really powerful message. You remove any one of them and it just falls apart. All three got to be there: accurate, compelling, and clear. Work on that in your next message. When you're finished, before you go to preach, while the preparation is still kind of fresh on your mind, ask these three questions and then let me know how it goes for you. If you're watching on YouTube, you can let me know in the comments below. If you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever, please leave us a review. 5-star review would be preferable. Can't wait to see you in the next episode. Until then, remember that if God can speak through a donkey, he can speak through you, and he can speak through me. We'll see you next time here at the Preaching Donkey Podcast.